Wednesday, April 3rd, here on the Just Baseball Show, Ronel Blanco of the Houston Astros throws the first no-hitter of the 2024 MLB season. And also, I'm Peter Apple, that's Aram Layton, and you know what day it is. Should we harmonize?
It's a
Three,
mailbag.
2, 1, mailbag.
Mailbag.
Look at that. Jack's not here to see it, but Jack would be proud of you. You're getting
That's as
through it
high
a
as I
little
can
bit.
go.
It's as
That's as
high
high
as
as
you
I can
can
go.
go. We're doing well. We have all of the questions that you guys asked, whether that be on Instagram or on Twitter. On Twitter at justbb_media and on Instagram at Just Baseball Show. We really appreciate everybody leaving all of their questions. We have 8 of them. But before that, all of this is brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. Remember, folks, download the BetMGM app on iOS or Android. Use code JustBaseball when you deposit. And when you do, they are offering a free bet offer up to $1,500. Jack and I were joking on the last podcast, Arm, that it's definitely a good time to take advantage of the free money they're giving you, because in my picks, I'm just giving it right back to them. So at least if we could give them back the money that they gave us, that would be more ideal. And I want to ask you how you are. It's been a full day since we last spoke, but really, let's talk about Ronel Blanco's no-hitter. 9 innings, no hits, obviously. Only 2 walks, both to George Springer. 7 strikeouts, 20 whiffs, doing whatever he wanted with both his slider and his changeup. The command was impeccable. The complete outing was impeccable. And he didn't throw it against the A's like Domingo Germán might have,
Yeah.
even though his was a perfect game. This was against a Blue Jays offense that just went toe-to-toe with Tampa, putting up 8+ runs multiple times. And Ronel Blanco no-hit them. What a performance. What'd you think?
I love these stories. Like I love when it's a guy like Ronel Blanco who looks great in spring training, but I think it's just a perfect example of people like to talk about just the difference between a really good pitcher and some of the replacement level pitchers or anything in between in Major League Baseball. But how many no hitters are thrown by guys that maybe even a lot of fans may never have even heard of? It's just a testament to one, how talented every major league pitcher is, but two, how at 30 years old, especially on the pitching side, it's never too late to find something. And Ronel Blanco in spring training, we saw him. The strikeout numbers were fantastic. You mentioned the command, the pitch mix, and it looked like something clicked for him, but you always got to take it with a grain of salt. And then we see him in this first big league start of the year, and it just continues to roll here. Clearly, he's figured something out. Whether he maintains frontline stuff and looks like a guy that could throw a no hitter every day or not is going to be remain to be seen. But I think just even this outing in its own in itself is just a testament to it's never too late for these guys to figure something out and how talented they are. Because it wasn't like a guy having some good batted ball luck. As you said, he mixed his pitches, he kept hitters off balance, and then when he needed to, he blew it by guys as well. He just looked in control the entire time.
It's also a testament to the Astros
Yeah.
international
Yes.
scouting. This is from Danny Vietti of CBS Sports. Ronel Blanco signed for $5,000. Jose Altuve signed for $15,000. Christian Javier signs for $10,000. Frember Valdez signs for $10,000. Luis Garcia signed for $20,000, and they acquired Yordan Alvarez for Josh Fields. Their ability to identify these guys, because it's one thing to identify the top prospect on the international market, right? It's very easy to give a guy like Jason Dominguez $5 million when every single scout is staring at the man and
Yes.
saying, yeah, this guy is the truth. But to find is one thing, and to have success finding these 15, 16-year-olds down in the Dominican Republic or in Venezuela or in these other countries, and to develop them and to produce above average big leaguers. Now, it remains to be seen, will Ronel Blanco be an above average big leaguer? I don't know. But if we look at the Astros track record, it's hard to say that he won't, especially after he flashed that kind of stuff with that type of command. And the
And
second
to,
thing,
oh,
real
sorry, go
quick
ahead.
thing, Martin Maldonado did not catch it, which is huge for the Astros. It's huge for narratives, because the only reason I think they kept Martin Maldonado was that relationship with the pitchers. And now
Yeah.
it's been 7 days and we already have a no-hitter for Ronel Blanco. So that was the only thing I wanted to add on that.
And Diaz has been awesome, and clearly he's doing something pretty well on his end. To your point, the other aspect that I think is important is the Astros development side, and not just from a prospect perspective, but we talk about a lot of pitchers, big leaguers that have gone there and then unlocked something or found something with their arsenal or made some tweaks that have kind of helped them just get to the next level. And with Blanco, that seems to be the case. At 30 years old, to be making these tweaks and finding it, it just seems like the Astros are their own underrated lab as well. I mean, we see a lot of really talented arms that maybe look like they're running out of gas, get this second life over there as well. With Blanco, it just seems like it's another example of good development. We're gonna have to need to see him do it over a larger sample, but this is coming on the heels of a great spring training. And when you look at the start, it's pretty hard to deny the stuff. He mixed that fastball, slider, and changeup pretty evenly, and all were effective for him. And he landed the changeup for a strike like 81% of the time in that outing. Like, that's just crazy stuff. You could even argue that the fastball command could have been a bit better, and he still was nails. I mean, the only two walks really were to George Springer, right? And
He
George Springer, I don't think is like chased all year so far.
led off the game with a walk, and then in the last inning walked. And if he got George Springer out, he would have had a Maddox. He would have had a complete game under 100 pitches. He was extremely effective, early counts, getting his ground ball, getting his weak pop up, or getting the strikeout with plenty whiffs, like I said. Your reaction to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being the last out?
He did look uncomfortable all game. 3 punchies and then that ground ball. Nice hard 90 from Vladdy, though. I don't know if
Nice
I've ever
hard
seen a
90.
motor like that. He did not want to get no hit. That was a nice hard 90. I think the only reason they got no hit was Bo Bichette wasn't in the lineup.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
the
it was
only
clear
reason.
that was such a Peter narrative game.
Yeah.
Bobichette wasn't in the lineup, but they get no hit. Number two, Vladdy makes the last out, punches out 3 times.
Well,
Nobody
and
can tell me anything forever.
if they don't get no hit again, you're in every other game that Bo Bichette's there. Games that Bo Bichette's not in, no hit. Games he's in, not no hit.
When I do the top 100 next year, don't let me forget that point, because that's going to be a major point that you agree with right now. And next year, we're going to go through it. We have tons of questions, Arm. Let's get straight to it. Which undefeated surprise are you buying, and which defeated start are you selling? This is asked from Savento on Twitter. So basically, the premise of the question, which surprise, right? So I don't think it's necessarily a surprise that the Yankees are 5-0. I think a lot of people thought they were a good team, but I wouldn't put them in the surprise category, right? But you probably would put the Tigers in the surprise category. As we're recording right now, we're recording kind of in the middle of all of the games, so we don't know the final scores yet. But right now, the Tigers are 4-0, right? I'm not surprised that the Rangers are 3-1. I'm not surprised that the Braves are 3-1 as well. But I am surprised that the Pirates are 5-0. I am surprised that the Brewers are 5-0, and I'm not surprised by the Dodgers starting 5-2. So between the Pirates, Brewers, and Tigers, which surprise are you buying early? And remember, it's early, right? You don't have to stamp it right now. But have you seen changes of another team? Is there a team right now that started off hot that you think to yourself, this doesn't seem fluky to me?
I mean, to specifically answer the question off of the undefeated teams, of course, the Yankees are the low-hanging fruit, as you mentioned. I do think it was a surprise to see them go to Houston, as you guys talked about a couple episodes ago, and just smack them and walk out of there undefeated. But when we're looking at the
Wait,
Pirates,
can you say that again? What did the Yankees do? They smacked them?
they
Can you say that
smacked
again?
them
Or just,
around and they walked out
yeah.
of there undefeated.
Oh, it
Absolutely.
makes me feel so good to hear
Absolutely.
that.
It was some impressive stuff, but we've seen them start well in the first half though, so we'll see if they can keep it going.
Hey, you didn't have to add that. You
I
didn't
heard
have to
this.
do that. Why'd
I
you do that?
remember a couple years ago, they were the best team in the world in the first half. Uh,
Or I was having such a great time. You dickhead. All right, answer the question.
it's a Tigers versus Pirates thing, and I think it's a fun question because like, who are you buying more? I think both of these teams. We talked about both of them, like good, and we thought this would be the year that they take kind of that half step forward. They're not going to be a contender, at least is that what we thought, but we thought they'd be closer to that 500 range and hang around. I'm in the same boat with both of them for the most part. I would say the Brewers are the biggest surprise to me because I don't think they're going to maintain that 3-0 start. I think they're going to slow down a little bit. So I'll lean towards. I can't believe I'm saying it. I'm gonna buy the Tigers, what they're doing a little bit more than the
Interesting.
Pirates. I think the Marlins just look terrible. And we talked about that last episode. Like, yes, it was impressive to go and sweep it. You're sweeping a major league team. I thought the game, the Jesus Luzardo opening day was most impressive to win that game. The rest, I mean, there were some balls in the outfield I could have caught. I'd say the Tigers are the most impressive because, and I'm buying it. I would say because it just seems like that team is pretty talented. Like we talked about the offensive side and why we think they could kind of make that leap this year. And then the pitching is as good as we've seen it. You've got one of the Cy Young favorites. You've got other guys now. The big thing was the big drop off that you get like in the 3, 4, 5 in the rotation. You don't have that as much anymore. The bullpen looks fun. I mean, Foley's throwing 105 basically. Like they have a unique bullpen as well all of a sudden where it's not just Alex Lang and nobody else. I think Chafin's going to bounce back. I think Shelby Miller was a nice addition. And then even plugging their holes from last year with players that are serviceable, like a Mark Canna, even like a Gio Urshela. I just feel like this team doesn't have those big leaks anymore, and a lot of the young players are kind of taking that step forward. And the pitching is as deep as it's ever been. I'm buying what the Tigers are doing relative to anybody else.
I think I'm buying the Pirates a little bit more than the Tigers. And it's not that I'm saying that I think the Pirates are going to have a better record than the Tigers at the end of the season, but I realistically could see it. And the reason I'm buying the Pirates early is because they still have more pitchers coming up the pipeline, whether that is Paul Skeens, whether that is Quinn Priester. We saw Jared Jones debut, and he put up the highest stuff plus among any starter, right? And they're getting good performances from some of the other starting pitchers. And similarly to the Tigers, that bullpen has also been pretty impressive. But I think the differentiator for me is I'm much more excited about this Pirates offense than I ever have been. So last year, the Pirates were among the bottom 5 teams against left-handed pitching, and I faded them against Mackenzie Gore. They put up some really, really good at-bats, and it's because they now have guys that they can platoon, right? They might bring in a Michael Taylor. They might bring in an Edward Olivares, right? They brought it back Andrew McCutchen. Henry Davis looks like he can rake off lefties. There's a lot of right-handed solid bats. Even a guy like Alika Williams, I don't even know if I mentioned him yet, playing
Connor
second base.
Joe.
Connor
Joe's
Joe,
crushing
exactly,
lefties.
at the top of the lineup. But then against righties, first of all, they're bringing in so many lefty relievers against O'Neill Cruz right now, and he's still looking fine, but he's their right-handed crusher. You also have Jack Sawinski. Then you have Brian Reynolds, who can hit from both sides. Lefties used to dominate this Pirates team. They were actually an average offense by WRC plus against righties last year. That offense looks better, and it looks like you can't really beat them with any other arm. And considering there's more talented pitchers, I think, in their minor league system right now that are more major league ready than the Tigers have, I think I'm buying the Pirates
That's fair.
relative to expectations.
Yes.
Because I think the Tigers were like the most hyped team in the offseason.
Yes.
And I agree with you. I think they'll end up being better if we're comparing the Tigers and the Pirates. But relative to expectations, I'm buying the Pirates start more than the Tigers because the Tigers also, like the Pirates beat the Marlins, Tigers beat the White Sox. And
Yeah.
then
No, fair
that
enough.
last game to bring them to 4-0, it was 0-0. They got shut down by Sean Manaea, 6 innings, 2 hits. Credit to him. He looked great, 8 strikeouts. But they won in extra innings because the Mets made a bunch of errors. Like I
It's
think
fair.
so I'm gonna go with the Pirates. I like their team, how it's situated, and I'm really excited about the
I,
future.
I do like the Pirates offense better right now because Torque's off to a little bit of a slow start. I watched him struggle with Eric Fetty. I watched
Yeah.
a lot of that game. Colt Keith, he's going to be great, but it's going to be a little bit of a process as he just gets his feet under him. We're hoping Riley Green makes that leap and Kerry Carpenter. And I think all those guys are going to get better and continue to be solid pieces. But Parker Meadows, we're hoping he'll be good, but there's some volatility there offensively. What are you going to get from Javier Baez this year? And those are some things that I think when you look at the offensive perspective, I'm definitely buying the Pirates a little bit more. I love and especially when they get on the pitching side. I mean, Paul Skeens is going to be there soon, and he couldn't have looked much better in his AAA debut. We talked about that last episode. But when you have Scuball, I thought Flaherty looked good. I know it was the White Sox, but I thought Flaherty looked good.
Yeah, I
Reese
did.
Olson's fun. Casey Mize is good. I hope Job gets up there at some point, but he's definitely going to be further behind than Skeens. I think Casey Mize is the big X factor here, but I'm with you. I think that the Pirates offense is better and a little bit more exciting, but I never thought I'd be this excited about the Detroit Tigers pitching. And I still do love the upside of the Kerry Carpenters of the world and Riley Green and Colt Keith, but I could also see it fizzling out or just being a little bit sporadic because they're young and volatile and a little bit left-handed heavy. You talk about the mixing and matching.
What about the defeated start? So these are the teams that are all winless right now. So the Chicago White Sox are 0-4. They might genuinely end the season 0-162. The A's have won a game, so they're not in this category, but the Mets are right now at 0-4. The Miami Marlins are also 0-5. So between the Marlins, the Mets, and the White Sox, which team are you buying to not keep sucking? And
Yeah.
I think the answer is so obvious. I mean, how could it not be the Mets, right? This team is way too good to start off this poorly. They still have pretty decent pitching, I think, even in the starting rotation without Kodai Senga right now, who will return, right? Outside of Luis Severino, Quintana gave you a good start. Sean Manaea gave you a good start. And then the bullpen, right? The bullpen has gotten a lot of work recently in the first couple of games because they can't hold leads, but it's still a very, very solid bullpen projected to be close to the top 10 at the end of the season, according to Fangraphs. And the offense, like Lindor has 1 hit with a 50% hard hit rate. Pete Alonso has 4 hits with a 397 xWOBA. Like so many guys in their lineup are hitting the ball hard. It's just getting caught right now. They are 3 for 17 as we record with runners in scoring position. That's just not going to last. That's just like a weird, fluky, bad start. The Marlins, on the other hand, I mean, there is someone on this podcast who has the most money they've ever put on a bet on an under 78.5 wins. So I do feel good. And the White Sox, they genuinely might lose every single game.
Yeah, I mean, they're terrible. They added Mike Clevenger, so that's exciting, I guess, right?
That's a pitcher.
Jack was talking about with the Mike Soroka. He thinks that he might be the first pitcher to ever make like 10 starts and average less than 2.5 Ks per nine. And I think that's possible with Soroka. To piggyback on the Mets point, the Mets are the obvious answer here, not just because they're the best projected team going into the season, just really contextualizing how unfortunate things have been for them so far. I am not worried about Brandon Nimmo hitting. I'm not worried about Francisco Lindor hitting. Both of those guys, I think, have 1 hit so far this year. They're hitting 063.
Yeah.
And both of them, it's only a single. So neither of them have slugged at all or really hit, period. Jeff McNeil is hitting under 100. Like a DJ Stewart, I could understand, like, oh, maybe it might not happen again this year for him like it happened last year. Joey Wendell, you might not want to play that guy that much. I get that. But you're going to get more from your veterans, especially a Lindor, especially Alonso's been fine so far, but especially a Nimmo, especially a McNeil. Starling Marte's been good. And I think that's actually huge for them because if he's playing at a decent level, that helps a ton. Alvarez has been great. Beatty has been fine out of the gate so far. So I'm with you. And then you're going to get my big concern is the rotation. But as you mentioned, Quintana is going to hold it down and be passable. We'll see how Severino looks. I think he might end up just being a disaster when it's all said and done. But Manaea was great. Hauser can be an innings eater and be fine. And then once you get Kodai Senga back, I also think Max Kranick is not a bad plug and play starter either, who should be back off the IL relatively soon. This team is not that bad. And I love the point you make about the bullpen. You get the best closer in baseball. And then Raley, Drew Smith, Diekman, all been solid, all have a track record of being pretty solid. This team is not nearly as bad as the other 2 teams we're comparing them to. The Marlins, look, that I support that bet. I think that you're going to hit there. They're going to be better than the White Sox by a fair margin. Like they don't have Braxton Garrett. They're going to get him back. They don't have Yuri Perez. I'm a little bit more worried about when they get him back. I think it might be one of those things where they just kick the can down the road and we don't get a clear, definitive timeline. But before you know it, it's midway through the season. And he hasn't really thrown yet. So I'm not counting on him as much, but you're going to get Braxton Garrett back. I think the offense, they're probably going to realize like, hey, we should probably just bring up some young guys, see what they can do, not just give away runs in the outfield with Brian De La Cruz and things like that. And the offense is just going to be better. Luis Arias is not going to be that bad.
You don't think Avisel Garcia is worth it?
I think you should get a longer look. It's only been 2 years and change, and he deserves a little bit more time. So I think the Marlins are going to be bad this year. Don't get me wrong, but I'd also think that they're not nearly as bad as some of the worst teams in the league, and I don't think they're 0-5 bad. But the Mets are the clear answer here. They're going to be better. I don't know. And also, we didn't even mention they're getting JD Martinez at some point. He's ramping back up. That'll be a jolt for the offense. That guy is just proven. He's consistent. He's gonna hit, even if it's not his prime JD. You can pretty much count on that guy for a 120 WRC plus at the very least. JD will really help this team as well. Those are at bats that are going to DJ Stewart right now.
Have you seen the stat that Jazz has been referencing on the Marlins, Shadows plus?
Yes, we
Right, said
talked
the
about that last
Shadows, yeah,
episode.
are
Yes.
too heavy. It's kind of mean to the Marlins, even though they're at home, and the other team has to play there too. But it does feel like it affects the Marlins more. I just wanted to hear your point on
Yeah,
Shadows
no,
plus.
I talked about that a lot last episode.
Okay,
Where
then we can save it.
no,
I
it's
just
just
more wanted to make fun of it
yeah,
in a
no, it's a
sarcastic
shame that the
question.
Marlins have those home only shadows.
Yeah.
It's tough to get rid of those.
Did you hear Trevor Plouffe just being like, "What
Yeah,
the hell are you talking
we,
about, dude?"
yep,
I mean, it's
we
just
hit on,
like we all have to play them. Yeah, they suck, but that's not something you tell the media. What
yep.
a disaster! But maybe the Marlins will bounce back. Who knows? This is a sneaky great question, and I grabbed it, and it didn't have any likes or anything, but I thought it was genius. I thought it was genius. Do you think the Orioles could fail to maximize their potential this season by clinging on to veterans like Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Ramon Arias, when they could shift to their prospects, being Jackson Holliday, Colton Cowser, Colby Mayo, Connor Norby, Kyle Stowers, and this is asked from Mark FM 18 on Twitter. And the reason I love this question so much is I'm watching the Orioles game last night, right, where they got that walk-off against the Kansas City Royals. Number one, before we even get to the question, Orioles fans, welcome to the Craig Kimbrell Show.
Yeah.
This is not going to be fun. You guys are used to Yenier Cano. You're used to Felix Bautista. Have fun with Craig Kimbrell in the ninth.
I can't believe how much they paid him.
I have to downgrade the Orioles because of it. I'm sorry. I mean, that's a disaster. I mean, he's facing 8-9-1 in the lineup. All you got to do is get through those guys, like guys like Kyle Isabel down there. Of course he couldn't get through them. And then Michael Garcia again, and then they steal the bases, and you can steal whenever you want on Kimbrell with the new rules. You can just go. The guy got to third. It's a free bag. So that's going to be a disaster. But the reason I wanted to bring up the question again, I'm watching Austin Hayes ground out every at-bat. I'm watching Cedric Mullins put up decent ABs, but it doesn't look like the same Cedric Mullins that I think Orioles fans are used to. And Ramon Arias, if he's not playing great defense, then what are we doing with him in the lineup at all? The Orioles have a mega surplus, not a surplus, a mega surplus of just incredibly talented guys that Orioles fans want to see. But there's a catch-22 here, because while these prospects are doing amazing in the minor leagues, can they come up and produce a ton right now? Now, Jordan Westburg hit the game-winning home run. So I'm sure Orioles fans would say, yes, let's give it a try. As the prospect guy, as the guy who is diving into Orioles prospects every single day, and then watching the major league team, it's not like they have a big issue, right? They started off the season well. They're totally fine. But do you think that they could lose out on maximizing their potential this year by not starting to elevate some of these young guys? I think it's a fascinating question.
It's a great question, and it's tough because we always want to assume that prospects are just going to come up and reach their potential pretty quickly. And I think we take for granted the Austin Hayes of the world that are 2.5 win player, consistently above average bat, play solid defense, and just do a lot of things really well. Even Mullins, when Mullins is in a 6-4 player like he was a few years ago, he's still a great defender in center field and is dynamic, and nobody's really going to be able to plug into center and give you the defense that he gives you there, and that's a pretty cavernous outfield. I look at Ramon Arias though, and I think that's a spot where they're leaving some meat on the bone. Not only because it's the guy that's performing the least impressively, and also just I think the worst of the players that we're mentioning here. There's also it's
nicest,
a lot.
Well, hold on. That was the nicest way you could have said it. Like, I saw you kind of be like, he's performing the least of all of them.
It's like bad grammar to just not be mean. But like Arias, the thing with him is if you move him out of the lineup, it's a lot easier. You could pick, right? You could pick whether you want to have Jackson Holliday up there or if you want Kobe May up there, because you could then move Westburg to third and then that could be Holiday at second, or you just plug Kobe Mayo at third base immediately. Those guys I do think can give you offense that's similar to Urias at the very least, and have way more upside offensively. So I think that's the one spot where it really stands out. I can honestly understand the preference of Mullins and Hayes because they've done it. You want to get off to a good start. If they're slumping in the middle of the season, then you reevaluate. You try to get Cowser a little bit more run. I think it's the same story with Ryan O'Hearn. Like if he's struggling, he's off to a good start, but if he's struggling, there's a reason why Kerstad's been getting reps at first base in Norfolk. That I think you got that guy ready to plug in. Left-handed hitter makes a lot of sense. But for me, the only spot where I think they are leaving meat on the bone, and it's not just because of the slow start. I know Arias has been solid, but I like what Holiday and Mayo would be able to provide. I think is that third base spot where they could end up plugging somebody in and playing every day there. So that's where I'd hope they make the adjustment, and I think they will. I mean, dude, I just watched Kobe Mayo hit a home run 111 on a backup cutter that was like in on his hands. And then we saw Jackson Holiday for it with the cycle and do the things that he's doing. Those guys are just way more impactful if it all works out. The problem is Ramon Urias has zero options. So I think they're going to either have to find a place to move him to and then make it happen. So I wonder if they try to do that sooner rather than later.
I agree. I think that was the perfect answer because, people like, for example, I'm watching the game knowing all these prospects and being like, why the hell is Ramon Urias in? Why the hell is Austin Hayes in? Should we start looking at other options for Cedric Mullins? Because I'm so excited about the prospects.
Exactly.
And I think Orioles fans are too. You watch Gunnar come up. You watch Adley come up. You watch Jordan Westberg hit that walk-off home run. And it's almost like a drug. It's like they just gave a little bit of crack to all these Orioles fans. And it's like, give me more. I want more of this insane excitement, young blood fight. And then they see Austin Hayes ground out. But at the end of the day, Austin Hayes was an all-star last year.
Yes.
Literally last year. So I agree. Austin Hayes and Cedric Mullins, I don't think their job should be up in the air right now. Ramon Urias is a different story. But we got to keep running with Mullins and Hayes because in the dog days of summer, Orioles fans are going to look up and see a lot of these young guys struggling because they haven't gone through a full season when Cedric Mullins and Austin Hayes, the veterans who've been here before, then they'll start getting you those hits in July and August when you need them. So I agree with you. I think Ramon Urias is the guy to be on the lookout because of the third base prospects. Other than that, it's cool the Jets a little bit on Hayes and Mullins.
And I would love to see them get Cowser a little bit more run. He's on the roster. He doesn't need to play in the outfield. You could adjust. You could put Santander at the DH spot. You could put Mountcastle at first. Get O'Hearn out of the lineup. Give Cowser a little bit more run. He was amazing. He's so talented in terms of the upside. Let's see what he can do. If he struggles like he did last year, which I think he made some changes, looks good, then you can adjust. But I would love to see him get some more run. But the other thing too is I think we forget sometimes prospects struggling, and then we think about Gunnar and Adley, like you mentioned. But Joey Ortiz came up. It was ugly. I still think he's going to be really, really good. But there's a team that can't really give away games, give away ABs. Cowser last year, it was a little ugly. So you don't want to make a move and then you can't really go back as much. And that's the thing too. Once you bench a guy like Mullins for a prospect, you can't really undo that. That's a tough thing to go back on, both optically, clubhouse wise. There's a lot of aspects to that. So yeah, just to tie a bow on it, I think Arias is the only guy that I don't think you're sweating it from all of those perspectives as well.
Great question. And we moved to another great one. Is Red Sox pitching really this good, or has it been a product of their competition? Asked by Bowler Gambler on our Instagram. I like this Red Sox rotation. I do. Let me give you a stat here. So I've referenced Stuff Plus. Stuff Plus, you go on Fangraphs and you go to pitch modeling. Stuff Plus is a metric that grades the physical characteristics of each pitch, whether that's velocity, spin rate, release point. And Eno Saris is really the mind behind this stat. And it's a very good one for predicting future success. 3 of the 5 Red Sox pitchers through the opening series all ranked top 25 in that metric. Nick Pivetta was 3rd. Cutter Crawford was 22nd, and Brian Bayo was 25th. I know it's not against good competition. Those 3, I do like. It's not just because of Stuff Plus. I think those three we were pretty confident in would be solid arms this year.
Mhm.
What were we going to get from Garrett Whitlock, who has not only been injured, but has had to bounce around from the bullpen to the rotation? Tanner Houck, same thing. Both of them looked fantastic. Now, it was against bad competition, so it's really tough to tell. But to answer this question, I really do like the first three in their rotation. And then the second two have talent. And if it clicks, they can be solid 4 to 5 starters. I really do think, and I said this for the win total bet, even though
Yep.
I was got all the under. And I said, this rotation is not as bad as people are making it out to be. What was your reaction to the opening series for the Red Sox?
I think we were all in agreement on that, and
Yeah.
that's part of the reason why I went in on the over with the Sox, which is
I
it's
was
a
just
team that
giving, can I just give myself credit by myself?
yeah, you just gave the Red Sox a
No,
pat
I'm
on the
giving
back.
myself credit, even though we all agreed it, but I said I, because I'm an
But
asshole.
you know, you look at the second half of last year, uh, this has been where these arms were headed. I mean, even a Nick Pivetta, 3.3 ERA over his final, and I know he was kind of back and forth, 8 starts, 16 appearances, even picked up a save, but a 3.3 ERA over 73 and 2/3 innings. Underlying stats liked him even more. Cutter Crawford in 68 innings, 14 starts over the second half of last year, a sub 4 ERA, 3.52 FIP. I that those two guys I'm buying. You had a little bit of a slow second half from Brian Bayo, and I was like selling that slow second half. I think he's a solid middle rotation type of starter. So I think mostly it's Pavetta and Crawford that I really am buying what they're doing. I was more skeptical on Crawford, but then when you look at the kitchen sink approach that he has, we talk about some of the guys that don't have stuff that jumps off the page, but they can mix it and locate it, and he lands everything for a strike. It's hard to bet against that. And then Pavetta, you talk about stuff plus, like that fastball has crazy ride, breaking ball off of it's nasty. The command has gotten better and better. Both of those guys combined have walked less than 3 per 9 since the second half of last year. I'm buying those guys. Bayo is safe and solid. I think this is it this good? Like I don't know what this good necessarily means because this good would be like one of the best rotations in baseball. It's definitely not that, but it's way better than we've seen, and which is crazy because imagine if they kept Chris Sale. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, this might actually be a pretty solid rotation. Like I think it's already solid, but you add Chris Sale to this rotation, and it could be pretty darn good. I'm a little concerned about Whitlock's health. I'm a little concerned about Tanner Houck being able to replicate it because we've seen these flashes from Tanner Houck.
Yeah, we have.
It's being able to replicate it and hitters adjusting to him because he can get a little one dimensional. But I feel really good about the trio of Bayo, Pavetta, and Crawford, and I haven't really felt good about a trio in this rotation in some time. I think it makes the loss of Chris Sale sting a little bit more because all of a sudden you have him in there, and I mean this offense is pretty good. You could talk yourself into this team hanging around the second, the last wild card spot.
The Red Sox added a pitching-minded GM in Craig Breslow, and he's clearly, I mean, you can't give him all the credit for these additions, but at the same time, right, it's clear that at least it looks good on the forefront of the Craig Breslow reign or whatever it's called. You mentioned Chris Sale's a loss as well. What about Lucas Giolito? Right, like he was supposed to be in this Red Sox rotation, and then he went down with Tommy John surgery. So you're missing two guys. But right now, this Red Sox rotation, if I'm a Red Sox fan, I have to be excited.
How about the bullpen too? It's not that bad.
Yeah,
If Kenley's healthy, he's always fine. I always just gave that signing flack because they weren't spending money elsewhere, and like their highest paid pitcher was a older closer who they gave multiple years to. But Chris Martin's been one of the best relievers. I love that trade for Isaiah Campbell. When he's healthy, he's a solid sixth, seventh inning guy. And I've told you like on the show a bunch of times, Justin Slayton was one of my favorite Rule 5 pickups. He's already picked up a save. He's 2 1/3 scoreless. Weissert out of that pen. There's a lot more arms that have some high leverage type of stuff. So, I mean, this is the best version, I think, of the rotation if we've seen in a little bit. At least, maybe there was more talent before, but it just wasn't healthy, wasn't producing. I believe in this rotation more than I have from the Red Sox in probably like 3 years.
I agree. And Greg Weissert, former Yankee, one of the nastiest sweepers I've ever
Oh
seen.
my gosh. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Another fascinating question. With the Reds' young core of position players, who would you target to sign in a long-term deal similar to the Braves model? Asked by Flickerstick on Instagram. I want to hear your answer first. Because I have a very hot take.
You're gonna go Spencer Steer or something.
I'm
Uh,
not. I just want to hear what you say first because you're going to give a much more reasonable answer than I will.
I'm struggling because Ellie De La Cruz is then the one that everyone's like, oh, are you gonna say Ellie? I think that the criticism of Ellie and where he's trended in the second half of last year was unfair. But at the same time, I do think that acknowledging the volatility and the risk there is also fair. I just think using that to change your assessment of the player is kind of crazy when he was 21 last year. But I'm not giving him a long term deal yet. I need to see some more things.
You want to hear my
Ugh.
answer? You want to hear my answer?
Yeah, let's hear yours.
None of them. That's
I
my
don't
answer
think
is
that's
none
a
of them.
bad take.
I mean, think about
I
it. You know
don't
who
think
I'm
it's bad.
closest to? Will Benson. That's who I'm
Yeah.
closest to. He is a menacing ass hitter. I love him in the box. Like
He's
you guys,
scary.
Reds fans, I'm a huge Spencer Steer guy, and like I could understand giving him a long-term deal because I think he's just going to be a solid baseball player kind of forever.
And it would
But
be
it's like,
cheap, like
yeah,
five
but
years, 20 million or something on
exactly,
like
exactly. Like I would give him like an easy contract to pallet. Will Benson, I think, is actually really, really exciting. He needs to move up in the order. I love his energy. I love the way he plays. He's scary. He's just this scary, huge man with a ton of thump, speed. He can play the outfield. I like him a lot. Ellie, are you seeing him
gotta
bunting
wait.
all the time? Are you seeing him bunting all the time? That's what
Yeah,
I've been. And they were talking about it on the broadcast that he was working on it because they want to get his speed on the base pass, right? I mean, this is a guy who could steal 50 bases if he gets on 50 times, right? So that's something that they're trying. But at the end of the day, to start the season, he's got a 52.5% strikeout rate. And now it's extremely early and he's not going to strike out at that rate. But he's a big strikeout guy who
yeah.
hasn't shown that he can really hit lefties from the right side either. Now it's looked
Hmm.
a little bit better, right? You hear the Reds booth talk about it, and he does look more comfortable. He's hitting the ball a little bit harder. So that's something to watch. But that's the thing. We need to see way more from Ellie De La Cruz. Noel V. Marte goes down with the steroid thing, right? Like, I don't think you're giving a long term deal to Friedel or Fraley
No.
or India or. I mean, and then McLean is probably the answer that a lot of people are
If he was
waiting
healthy, I
on.
would have ran with that
But yeah, exactly, you would have ran with it. But he has been unhealthy
a
since
lot.
he debuted. So my answer, and I thought it would be a hot take, maybe it's not, is none of them.
I think it's a good take. I do think Steer is a good one because of the cheapness of it. You would be able to get him. It would be one of those crazy like 6 years, 35 million type of things that I think would be great because there's no way you get burned. There could be a scenario where you're just like, maybe we could have just saved the money and not done it. But at the same time, I do think he takes another step forward this year from an offensive perspective. He hit 23 bombs last year. He got killed on the WAR side of things because they moved him around. He
Yeah.
plugged in so many different places. I don't think he graded out as great
He's
defensively
just like
because he
not
was
a good he's not a good defender playing every position. And
correct.
it's not
Yeah,
for
like
really
that's
your
pretty
war.
hard.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be a mediocre defender, being versatile is valuable.
Yeah.
And that's why I'd give him a longer deal. But if he's playing left field every day, I do think he'll grow into a better defender out there. There's almost no scenario where I could see him just falling flat and sucking. It wouldn't be like a David Bodie type of thing. If you look at how he's hit every single stop, he's been great. I really think that's my answer. I love CES, but there's volatility to that profile as well, and he's so limited. Just to being mostly a first baseman that I don't think I could do it there either. So I would consider CES if he gets off to a hot start this year, but I really think the only reasonable answer is Spencer Steer on one of the cheaper pre-arb deals we've seen in some time. And I'm almost never giving it to a pitcher. And even then, you already saw them extend Hunter Green. You're not going to extend Andrew Abbott or Graham Ashcraft or anything like that. So yeah, I think the answer is nobody or cheap to Spencer Steer because Ellie De La Cruz, it's going to be expensive, even though he hasn't proven too much yet because of the talent. And there's no reason for Ellie to sign it at this point because he could turn into that superstar. So yeah, I'm with you. It's a great question because they have so many young, fun players, but none of them are really worth the risk at this point. I think other than Steer and maybe CES if the Reds really buy into what he's doing offensively. And I am a believer in what he's got going with the bat. And I do think he could have a monster offensive season.
I agree with everything you said except for one point, and it's not that I don't agree with it. I just want to talk about it more. You mentioned some of the pitchers, and you said, I understand not extending Graham Ashcraft. He's put up back-to-back years of a 5 ERA, always ranks high in stuff plus, but just hasn't delivered yet. Andrew Abbott's been delivering. So is that a guy that you really aren't touching still? Like I could understand not doing it, but putting him in a bucket where it's like no way. I feel like he might be the answer to this question, even though I think they're looking for offensive pieces to this question.
He could be. I just wish it wasn't such a dramatic first half, second half last year. It was a
True.
2.38 in the first half, a 4.79 in the second half. If it's kind of in the Spencer Steer boat for me because I think he's very solid. I don't think you get burned at all. So I wouldn't put him in that bucket with Ashcraft at all. I think it's a good clarification. But I am a little worried. Like, does the long ball burn him? Does he struggle to keep runs off the board? I mean, opponents had 275 against him in the second half. But he's another one of those guys. Worst case, he's a back end arm. He eats innings, and maybe you're paying him a little bit extra because you gave him this extension, but you also got extra years of control of a left-handed pitcher. So Abbott could be one of the more acceptable answers too. He's not even 25 years old yet, and as you mentioned, like he's shown what he can do, and at the very least, he's going to be able to be your 5 starter.
I'd give Will Benson 200 million. I think
He's so fun. That is I think the scariest guy I ever played against in like this summer ball or anything in terms of just physical imposition. Like I've never seen somebody that big and that scary. And then, warm ups when you're warming up. I think I told this story on the show, but you're warming up down like each foul line before the game, just playing catch. He was doing foul pole to foul pole with, I think, Will Banfield or somebody else for the East Cobb Astros. And we're just standing there. I'm like, dude, like, I just woke up like an hour ago from my Holiday Inn. Like, I'm just trying to like throw a couple times, splash some water in my face, and go punch out 3 times from Braxton Garrett. And he's just chucking foul pole to foul pole. And I was like, all right, this guy's different. And sure enough, he has turned into a monster.
Was that the moment when you didn't think you were going to make the major leagues?
Oh yeah. It was, I think it hit me a little bit earlier than that, but that was one where it was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm not even going to go D1. Maybe I'm just, he was committed to Duke. I'm like, yeah, well, I think I'm just going to start looking into this writing thing.
Yeah, the moment I knew I wasn't going to make the major leagues, Cooperstown got a 12-year-old throwing 85. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, Dad. Could I go home? Like, I think that's where I was at. I was
Does it
like,
hurt if it hits me?
I've barely seen 80, and the fact that I'm seeing 85 at 12, that it was a little bit above my tax bracket.
Yeah.
All right. Number 5. Talked a lot about some young prospects. Time to talk about the trade deadline. We're way out. We're way out.
Classic from the listeners and just general baseball fans. I love it.
The thing is, I'm in it. Like, I'm one of those guys that's like, you know what? Let's talk about it. Fuck it. All right. Who will be the biggest unexpected big fish of this trade deadline? That was asked by Caden Jessany, Jessani, on Instagram. I have 2, and they both play the same position, and both of them probably aren't going to get traded. But the question was unexpected.
Unexpected. That's the thing I'm trying to like sort through in my brain.
Do you want me to give you my 2 answers?
Yes.
They're both free agents at the end of the year. They both play first base, and they both play first base for teams that are on the tightrope. Will they sell? Will they not? We don't know. Do you know what I'm getting at?
Free agent after
I
this
like
year.
it because it's unexpected.
Yeah.
Or they're free agents soon.
Soon.
One of them is definitely a free agent next year.
NL Central team by chance?
One is an NL Central, one is an NL East. Yes, both are free agents next year.
Pete Alonso.
Pete Alonso of the Mets.
And Paul Goldschmidt.
Paul Goldschmidt.
That's where my mind went.
The question
I'm still crediting you as unexpected. I just know you too well, and I agree.
Unexpected. So Pete Alonso and Paul Goldschmidt are both free agents at the end of this season. The St. Louis Cardinals are not off to a great start.
Yeah.
It's been against, great competition, but we know what could happen to the St. Louis Cardinals. You have a 37-year-old Paul Goldschmidt. Do you want to cash in? Do you want to go get some pitching, or do you want to keep rolling with it? Are you going to re-sign him? Probably not. Pete Alonso, this is a bridge year for the New York Mets. Is Pete Alonso a part of your future? You seem to have made it clear that you have not offered him the extension yet, which tells me once you go to free agency, you're probably not going to be the team that outbids and then gets Pete Alonso back. It also might leave a sour taste on Pete Alonso's tongue, and he may not even want to go back. So now is the time, if you're trying to recoup assets and bring in more prospects, Pete Alonso, for a team that is in need of offense that wants to make a playoff push, that makes perfect sense. So my two answers are the two guys who are a little bit older, going to be free agents, still very, very valuable bats on teams. They're on the brink of maybe trading, maybe not. So I think they fit the bill of unexpected. We could go through a bunch of guys who will probably get traded, but unexpectedly, Pete Alonso and Paul Goldschmidt could be on the move.
I agree. I think, we've said the Mets are going to bounce back. They'll be better. But if they're middling, which is what I think they're ultimately going to be, Alonso, it seems like I think they would have extended him by now. I really do. So if they think they're going to lose him, remember, yes, it is the Mets and it is Steve Cohen, but it also is a different front office. It's a front office that is run by Stearns, who's more like what we saw the Brewers do. And the Brewers wouldn't just lose a guy in free agency, I don't think, as much as maybe the previous Mets regime may have. So I think we're going to see, I think we could see him moved pretty easily. But I still think that would be a surprise because Pete Alonso and the Mets are like, you just associate that. I really like the Goldschmidt one, and kind of going down that same route. I think Wilson Contreras could get moved, and that might not be the most unexpected, but I just also think it's not a name that when people are thinking about the deadline is going to come up. And at the end of the day, he's a catcher who can swing it at a great second half. But if the Cardinals aren't playing at a high level, they can cash in on Wilson. And I love Ivan Herrera, top 100 prospect for us. He's already gotten some run. I love what we've seen from him in the short stint of the big leagues. He's younger. Obviously, he's a rookie, but he's cheaper. I think he has plenty of upside. And I could see them just saying, hey, we're not playing well this year. We want to build around Nolan Gorman. We want to build around even Brendan Donovan and Jordan Walker and Victor Scott and Mason Wynn and our young guys. And let's get younger. Let's let Ivan Herrera play. I could see Wilson Contreras get moved, and there's plenty of teams that could use him. And I think he'd be a great asset, whether it's with the bat or just also bringing what he brings to the table. I think he's not the worst catcher, and he's worked hard to improve that way too. I'm not doing this as a troll, I swear. But if the Blue Jays struggle, I could see Bichette go because we've already heard it floated. So I know it wouldn't be as unexpected, but I don't know if anybody ever truly believed it. And I do think that if this is another disappointing year from the Blue Jays, you got to start wondering if they're going to keep this whole band together. A lot of these guys are older. Their farm system is fine. But I do wonder if, they start to look at it and say, hey, we can get a king's ransom for Bichette. And you look at the rest of the team, like if they sell, who else are you getting prospects for? IKF, Kevin Kiermaier, Alejandro Kirk. You're going to hold on to Varsho. You already gave up too much for him, and he's got plenty of control. Vladdy, George Springer. Like the only guys that you're really getting a big return for would be Vladdy and Bo Bichette. And I wouldn't be surprised to see one of those two. Maybe Vladdy too. One of those two, I think, could be the big surprise. We've heard some rumblings of Bichette, so maybe that undercuts the unexpected side of it. But I still think that it wouldn't shock me. And I think most people would not have him circled as a trade candidate, maybe.
Two quick things. Number one, why wouldn't Vladdy get a big return? He's so awesome, according to you.
No, I think Vladdy could get a good return. I'm saying Vladdy Bichette would get a good return, but would you just move Vladdy?
You could do Vladdy for a player to be named later.
You could.
Maybe scoop up some cash. Decent.
And then on the pitching side, maybe a Kevin Gausman.
Okay, but Blue Jays fans they probably just shut off the podcast.
Yeah, that's fair.
Define disappointing, because to the Blue Jays' credit, it's been disappointing in terms of not maybe winning division crowns or going to win a World Series.
They go to the playoffs, you're not selling.
But they're going to the playoffs. Like, define disappointing. What would happen? What would have to happen to the Blue Jays this season for them to even consider something like that?
I think they'd have to be, below 500 or, flirting with 500. And I think they're better than that. I don't think that we talked about it in the previews, but I'm saying if something goes awry, like I could see that, because I'm just struggling. You go through the teams. No way the Yankees sell. No way the Orioles sell. Nobody the Red Sox trade is going to be unexpected. No one the Rays trade is going to be unexpected. Same thing. Braves aren't selling. Phillies aren't selling. No one that the Nationals, Mets, or Marlins, other than Pete Alonso, sell will be unexpected. And you can kind of play that game division by division by division. So it's trying to find those teams that like would have to be underachieving and then move somebody that everyone's like, whoa, I was not expecting that. The Blue Jays, I just feel like it's less about them underachieving and more of like the AL could just be such a gauntlet with the Yankees, the Orioles. Now you have the Rays that I still think are ahead of them. The Red Sox are no slouch, and then you have other teams in the American League that are going to grab onto other wild card spots as well. Who's going to beat the Rangers? They're going to take the division. So you have the Mariners, the Astros. Like there's so many teams that even a decent Blue Jays squad could find themselves on the outside looking in. And if that's the case, then they might have to look at what next year is going to look like. And next year looks like a 34-year-old Kevin Gausman, a 33-year-old Yusei Kikuchi, a 36-year-old Chris Bassett, and a 35-year-old George Springer, actually 36 after this season, like all older guys and only a couple young pieces. They might have to just kind of consider reshuffling a little bit, and they could still go spend. I'm not saying fully rebuild, but I could see them cashing in on somebody that, maybe they just don't see as their long-term shortstop.
Remember, the question was unexpected. If you wanted us to give you the answers that you already thought of, that wasn't the question. And I love the answer from you, Arm. And I agree. Vladdy should get traded for nothing. I agree with you when you said that verbatim. Question number 6. Who are some guys sitting in AAA who need to be called up ASAP? Asked by Gut Takes on Twitter. You don't have to go into this in a ton of depth. It's super early. This was more like, and I want to get back to you doing your minor league report. I love that section.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like that. Like, who in AAA so far do you think is too talented and should definitely be on the big league club? And you could say every Orioles prospect, but
yeah,
try and choose
the Norfolk Tide, the entire Norfolk Tide. But no, obviously there's Skeens, and that's just another example of that as well. But I look at Owen Casey with the Cubs. They are wheeling out some guys in the DH spot that from time to time. I know Morel's been in there at points, but you could also, I think, look at Owen Casey and say that guy could be an upgrade over some of the power that they're lacking at times in that lineup. And I think Casey is pretty close to being ready, which is crazy because people thought he had hit tool concerns in Double-A last year. I thought he really showed some great things. Top 30 prospect for us. Had one of the best spring trainings you're going to see, and is off to a fantastic start, both from a hit tool perspective and still tapping into the power in AAA. I think Casey could be that jolt for the Cubs offense and be a really good option for them. I look across, like, I'm trying to think, like, from a pitching perspective, it seems like Skeens is just a matter of building him up. I look at the Blue Jays too. I think they're building up Ricky Tiedemann a little bit, and in the first outing wasn't the best, but I still think that he's a guy that can help them, whether it's in opener role where they have him go 3 innings or 4 if they don't have him all the way stretched out, or if he's a reliever and kind of the Swiss Army knife for them. I think he could be excellent there. It's been hard to keep him healthy, and I think that's the main concern here. But why waste the bullets if he's a guy that just struggles to stay on the field anyway? I think that's a guy that I could see end up getting, a little bit of an opportunity there. And then Jordan Beck with the Colorado Rockies, I have some concern about the swing and miss, but he is fast, he is big, he is powerful, and that team is so bad and so miserable to watch right now that I don't think he should spend too much time in AAA. I would love to see what he could do up there because I think he adds a level of dynamic to their lineup that they just need and gives them more upside. And then the last one, but not least, Joey Loperfido, not just because he's a friend of the program. I mean, they're running John Singleton out there sometimes. Loperfido can play first, he can play center, he can play second, he can play left, he can play right, and he's solid at all the spots. He has 3 home runs already. I was watching Jack Leiter make mincemeat of his entire lineup, was 1 pitch away from being 5 shutty, and then Joey Loperfido takes him deep for his 3rd home run already of the season. He was one of the best young hitters in spring training. He can steal bags. I think his last 126 games, he's hit 27 home runs and he's stolen 27 bags. So like he's done a little bit of everything, and the ability to play all these different spots, I think he could really be a nice boost for the Astros as well.
Would you take where you put in Loperfido? I think that's the issue.
I think he could play first base for them.
Huh.
I would like to see him place him first. Like, I mean,
Jose
dude,
Abreu,
Jose
like,
Abreu,
I
like,
mean, I said a really mean thing in our group chat about Jose Abreu, and I'm afraid to say it, but
if
I'll
you're afraid,
stand
don't say.
no, I'll stand on what I said. I said his bat speed looked like he was a camel. It's not that
Yeah,
mean.
which I don't even know what that means, but
I envisioned like a camel like slowly walking through the desert, like
yeah.
looking for
Okay.
water and just being parched. And I was like, that reminds me of how Jose Abreu looks like at the plate right now. Now we could totally go off it so early, and I'm more making fun of him because he's a legend and he won the MVP in 2020. And I'm sure
Yeah.
he wouldn't care about a little joke from me because he's developed such an incredible career. But at this
Yeah.
point in his career, the bat speed just, I mean, it doesn't look like Jose Abreu anymore. And he's getting very valuable ABs in the thick of an Astros lineup who's trying to win the World Series.
Yep.
That's my
And
issue.
it like Globe doesn't need to play every single day, but I also like that's not a guy. Globe Perfito's 25. Like I don't think you're as worried about development and things like that. Where you could still fit him into the lineup. Again, because he can play left. If you want to go a little bit more offensive heavy, McCormick can slide over to center. Myers takes the day off. Lope can play left. Other days, you need to just give a day off to Jose Abreu because he's slumping brutally. Perfito can play first. I think there's a lot of different ways where you can kind of fit him into the lineup. Even the occasional day off for Altuve, you want to keep him healthy. Like you can plug in there. I think the fact that he can play so many different positions and gives you some offensive upside. And they only have, I mean, their only left-handed bats are Jordan, Kyle Tucker, and then Singleton on the bench. So he also gives them and switching in Caratini, that's a backup catcher. He also gives them that left-handed thump off the bench as well, which I think is valuable too, and some much needed speed in that lineup. I'd love to see Loperfido up there at some point. The last one is Dane Myers with the Marlins. Like I know he's not a top prospect, but my goodness, he would be an upgrade over a lot of what they've got going on out there right now.
As would Griffin Conine.
Yes, Griff's off to a great start.
Hell yeah. Question number 7. Is optioning Esteury Ruiz after having a series in which he hit 429 with a 1232 OPS a sign that Major League Baseball needs to implement anti-tanking measures with the newly instituted draft lottery? Or is this the A's once again sabotaging themselves for the sake of moving to Vegas? Asked by Ben_Spittler on IG. I really wanted to bring this up because it is newsworthy. We normally would talk about something like this off the top, and I posted on Twitter with what he's doing so far, that same batting average, that same OPS. I'm watching him in the A's series be the only one who could even get on base anyway, and then they send him down. So this is from Jessica Kleinschmidt. She's an Oakland A's team reporter. And this is from A's GM David Force. So she had this interview and got this quote. And I quote from the GM of the A's. We talked about Esty a couple times during the spring and where he fits in the lineup on this team. And frankly, the importance of him playing every day. And as you can see through the first 4 games, and certainly with adding Tyler Nevin, who they just brought up, that wasn't going to happen here. Mark Kotze and I spoke to Ruiz today about some of the things that he needs to do to get back in this lineup, cutting down on strikeouts, getting on base, or things that we talked to him about all last season. We saw some better at bats. I assume it's a typo. But the reality is, to use his skill, he needs to get on base. You saw yesterday, just getting on base twice, how he impacted the game. He needs to be able to do that on a consistent basis. Well, that seems like a load of horse shit.
Yeah.
That seems like a load of horse shit. What do you mean? You were saying you need to get him on base more to tap into his skills? He's literally the only guy in your lineup right now getting on base. Your prize guy, Zach Geloff, is hitting below his weight. Esteury Ruiz is leading off hitting 430, and we send him down on him. Like, I can understand. You go to Baseball Savant, you see a lot of blue bubbles, and you think to yourself, well, they sent him down because he can't hit. He provides a lot more than just batted ball qualities.
I
He
mean, he
is one
stole
of the great
67
speeds. He
bags.
stole 67 bases last year. Like, no. Is he the greatest player of all time? No. But is he a Major League Baseball player? Of course he is. What was your read on this? I wish I came to you. I wanted to read that statement. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck they're doing. So do you know what the fuck they're doing?
I have no idea because the assertion that he needs everyday reps and whatever, like Ruiz is not. And I know people are saying, oh well, like he had a negative R WAR or whatever last year. Like why is everybody going to bat for him? If you look at Fangraph's WAR, He was one of, I think, 3 position players that was more than one win player last year. But also, like, that was a key player in a trade. And like they've made a bunch of trades that have been horrible. And he's one of the young guys that they've gotten back. And like Seth Brown is cooked. Well, I liked Seth Brown. I did. But he's been hurt. He was terrible last year. He's off to a horrible start this year. Why does 32-year-old Seth Brown have to play every day? If you're a team that's developing and building, why does Seth Brown have to play every day? I understand JJ Bleday with the first round pedigree. You want to see what he can do in center field, and he's actually off to a good start, and he showed some good things in spring training. Whatever. That's fine. Ruiz can play left field. Seth Brown does not need to be playing left field every single day for a team that is fully in rebuild mode. Beyond that, the same team that's focused on everyday reps for their players, Darryl Hernaiz is one of their better prospects, makes the big league team, and isn't playing every day in deference to Nick Allen. Nick Allen.
He leads the league in errors, Aram. He
And I
leads
know
the
he's
league in
hitting
errors.
308.
The defensive-minded shortstop, who, yes, is hitting 308, but he's never done that ever, and it's through 6 games, so I'm not buying it, is leading the league in errors. The A's are leading the league in errors. They have 13 errors as we record. Remember, 13 errors. We've only played 5 games. I mean, this is unbelievable. And then to bring up and say, well, Tyler Nevin needs all these games. What are we talking about?
Yeah. They claim Tyler Nevin, who's been on a carousel. Abraham Toro has no options. They traded for him. Like, he's in there. Like, I understand that you want him to play every day, but what does putting him back in the PCL where he had video game numbers, if you look at what he did, and that's why he turned himself from a non-prospect into a trade piece, was because of the fact that he was playing out of his mind in the PCL. What is sending him back to the PCL going to do for him? I know that they talk about working on some things. How is that going to help doing it against worse competition in a place where the ball absolutely flies? I don't understand how that is something that he can. He needs to get on base. Okay, be more selective. Work on that at the big league level. You suck. You're the worst team. They're a little bit less bad than last year. I would say they're the worst team I've seen in a while. Not quite. They're terrible. They have no chance. The season was over before it started. Play players who could turn into regulars eventually when you're in Vegas and when you want to start to try to be semi-competitive. And look, I get it. Noda, spot. Bleday, spot. Geloff gets a spot. Rooker gets a spot. JD Davis, nice grab. You can flip him. He gets a spot. Langeliers gets a spot. But even Lawrence Butler, I understand he's a higher regarded prospect. He has really struggled. You rushed him to the big leagues. That's a guy that could probably get some AAA run and who has been struggling mightily and has struggled mightily in multiple big league stints. I think Butler could be really good. They rushed him. They threw him into the fire. Butler makes more sense to be able to get some AAA reps. So I really don't understand what they're doing. I don't get why they do it. I feel like he's got to be so angry at Esteury Ruiz because it's unfair to him. And yes, you could say, oh, a couple games is a small sample size. If you did it all the way back, and it's not all the way back, but if you go back to September 1 of last year, his best month of his big league career so far was the last month of last year. So now he keeps that momentum going into the first few games this year, and you're going to send him down. That's the part that doesn't make sense. If he hit a wall and it was a terrible second half, and then they didn't see too much change, even though the numbers look good in the beginning, maybe it's a little more justifiable. But he was a league average hitter in the second half. So what do you want from him? He's been getting better and better, and now you're sending him down. It's inexcusable. I don't know if it's a tanking thing. I doubt it. He's not making or breaking your tank efforts. I just think it's the A's being inept, and that's become par for the course.
I think we gave you the best answer that we can. We just gave a long overarching answer to say we have no idea what the A's are doing. It makes no logical sense. It doesn't even make financial sense. Like, it's not like, oh, well, maybe they could do something. No, it makes no sense. All right, last question of the mailbag. Which AL and NL rookies have impressed you the most over the first week? Asked by Matt Too Frosty on Twitter. A lot of tough questions, a lot of fascinating ones. This is a little bit of a softball. I'll go first. It's so early. We keep saying that it's so early, but Nolan Shanwell of the Angels, I still like. I don't know. You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of Scott Hatterberg in Moneyball. He's just the dude gets on base. Like Billy Beane, Brad Pitt would be screaming at Art Howe, get Nolan Shanwell in the ballgame. And he'd be like, why? He's hitting 237. and Billy Bean, Brad Pitt would point to Jonah Hill and say, what's his OBP? And he'd say 375. The guy is a good hitter. He gets on like 18% walk rate. He even has a home run already. He's not really going to hit for that much power. But damn it, I think I like Nolan Shanwell. I like his AB. Sue me. I like it.
You know what? We talked about it going into the season. I think the whole Shanwell thing was funny because, yeah, he's not the player that should have been the first guy to fly through the minor leagues and debut. The fact that he held his own is extremely impressive. The fact that he's a first baseman who had 1 home run in 29 games last year is a little bit frustrating, considering when you try to project him long term. But people were so out on him that it was unfair.
Yeah.
To your point, he had a 112 WRC plus after 17 or 19 games in the minor leagues. And in the minor leagues, he was raking in that short stint. So yeah, he may not slug. He may not be the most exciting player in the world, but you know what? He's just picked up right where he left off. And I love you mentioning the home run. Like, yeah, it's only 1 and it's early, but he already has 1. He had 1 in 29 games last year. So that part's exciting. He's continuing to walk. I think that he got overhated, right? Like we talk about overrated, like, and then he got overhated, which has made him now underrated. I don't love the profile, but that doesn't mean that he's not a solid baseball player. And I think he could be a couple win player like we talked about in the past. I like what I've seen from Shanwell so far. I agree, especially on that miserable team.
Who would you go for in the National League?
It's got to be Jackson Merrill for me. I mean, I know it's a little bit of an obvious one, but I mean, and of course, like Wyatt Langford, we could talk about every single episode. And
yeah, Jackson Chorio agree. I wanted to pick a rookie who it's like not many people are watching right now. Like Jackson Chorio is the most impressive National League rookie. He's hitting 400 and playing great defense. I mean, Jackson Merrill's actually competing with him. But in terms of just like prospect pedigree, Chorio is the 20-year-old, like a lot of people know. Everybody knows Wyatt Langford and Evan Carter. I wanted to pick Nolan Shanwell, and I'm glad you went with Jackson Merrill on the Padres.
Yeah, and Merrill, of course, comes with a little bit more fanfare and is well known, and I could go Jung Hoo Lee too. I think he's look great, but I do really think that it's been impressive to see Jackson Merrill do what he's doing offensively while learning a new position defensively at the highest level.
We
The
saw
backside
Jordan
home run
Walker
the other day.
We saw Jordan Walker fail a little bit at that. First, it's
not
just tough.
easy.
It's not easy, and Jackson Merrill's doing it at a really, really young age.
I think that was something that I couldn't really go with anybody else based on just how good he has been and how comfortable. He just looks like a big leaguer. He just looks like a guy that has been doing it for a while, which is pretty absurd. And then a more deep cut, like underrated guy that I just did not have on my radar is Trey Lipscomb of the Washington Nationals. I saw him in the Arizona Fall League flounder. He had I think he had like a 474 OPS or something like that in the Arizona Fall League. And then he hit like 455 in spring training in the big leagues with like a lot of run. They played him a ton. We were like joking, like, why is he playing so much? And then through 3 games, he's been great. He already homered. His at-bats have looked comfortable. He stole a bag. He's been playing decent defense. Trey Lipscomb might be a nice little piece for the Nationals, and that's been a nice little pleasant surprise on the National League side as well. And I hope he keeps it rolling.
And then Shota Imanaga as well for the Cubs.
Oh yeah, that guy's
my
right.
God, I didn't get to talk about that on the podcast because you and Jack handled it, but my God, I mean, just surgical. But again, it was like against the Rockies, and it's like I want to buy it so much. It's like, well, it could be just Ryan McMahon syndrome, right? Or Elias Diaz All-Star Game MVP Elias Diaz syndrome. So that'll do it here for the Just Baseball show, the mailbag edition. Thank you guys again so much for asking all of your questions. We got tons and tons of them. We picked 8, and we're going to continue to do this all season long. So if your question didn't get answered, no worries. By the end of the season, we'll definitely get to all of them. Again, thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed, make sure to go get your Just Baseball merch in the episode description. And if you did enjoy and you don't want to spend a dime, we totally understand. If you could rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, 5 stars really, really helps this show. It's completely free. It takes 4 seconds. And if you want to leave a written review, again, we would greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed yet on YouTube, hit that big red subscribe button. It is completely free. We will be back tomorrow. Not sure if it's going to be Arm and Jack and I, no idea. All 3 of us, we don't know yet, but you will get a show tomorrow. That's Arm Laden. I'm Peter Apple. And with that, thank you, everybody.